Yeah, once again, welcome you all to the panel discussion. So just before we start, a few ground rules. Ensure that your mic is off, and also if there are any questions to the panelists, you could choose to write them in the chat box, and then after the presentations, we will take it up to them. So to begin, I would request Dr. Surat to take a couple of minutes to talk about the activities at the Center for Predictive Human Model Systems. After which we will have presentations by Dr. Kalaivani, followed by Dr. Uday and Mr. Bhanu. So over to you, Surat.
Thanks, Shyam, and thanks everyone for joining us on a Saturday morning. So I'll just take a few minutes of your time to briefly speak about CPHMS and why we have been having this webinar series. So I'll just share my screen. Okay. Can you see the screen, Shyam?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'm Surat. I'm a senior research associate at the Center for Predictive Human Model Systems at Atal Incubation Centre, CCMB. And this center was established now almost 2.5 years back as a collaboration between Atal Incubation Centre, CCMB and Humane Society International, India. And there's primarily a policy and policy center to enable technologies in India that are based on more human biology and human cells, rather than primarily relying on animal models in both research and drug discovery. So when I say human relevant models, what do I mean by that? So while biology research has been predominantly, it has always relied on animal models for a long time, but in the past 2 decades or so, several new technologies have been developed globally, such as organoids, organ-on-chip, advanced non-invasive imaging techniques, 3D engineered tissues, ex vivo cultures, and all of these technologies have emerged which primarily rely on human cells and which can thus capture the subtleties of human biology and the complexities. As we know, human populations are extremely heterogeneous, and how they respond to various diseases often depends on various factors such as comorbidities or various differences in our innate biology. So the aim is to how we can develop model systems that can capture all those heterogeneities rather than primarily relying on a homogeneous set of animal population, which often fails to capture many of these complexities. So towards this, our center has been involved in various activities. One has been increasing awareness, because many of these technologies are a recent development in the past decade or so, and the awareness that these technologies exist has been kind of low, particularly in India. So to do this, we have been writing popular articles, reviews, and this monthly webinar series, which we have now been conducting for more than a year, almost a year and a half, has been one of the initiatives towards that direction. We are also involved in education and training activities. We have conducted several workshops, and we have also now received a grant from EMBO to conduct a lecture series in this area, and we'll be announcing this lecture series very soon. So please stay tuned in for more updates on this. And we are also involved in several policy initiatives. We have written 3 white papers to map what is the status of these technologies in India and what are the challenges in terms of infrastructure, funding, or other factors which can further enable the researchers in India to further develop these technologies. And we are also involved in several global collaborations. And so we've also been involved in funding. We recently gave a grant to 2 Indian scientists to develop an adverse outcome pathway in the field of cancer, and that is currently an ongoing project. So the kind of roadmap that we envision to enable this field further in India is some of the initiatives that we are working towards is one, established centers of excellence, which can bring together a diverse array of researchers from relevant but different backgrounds together to further develop and validate these methodologies. and to develop connections between technology developers and end users, and facilitate dialogue between the regulatory bodies from the initial stages of technology development process, so that we can ease the process of regulatory approvals once the technology is developed. And as I've said that globally, these technologies are in several advanced stages. So how we can enable cross-border collaboration for technology transfer and international funding. And in India, there is also been issue of supply chain for developing many of these technologies. So that's also something which we would like to enable, is to have an indigenous supply chain for developing these technologies in India. So with this brief introduction about CPHMS, I would also like to say we have a quarterly newsletter, and the third issue of a newsletter will be coming out very soon. So please register for our newsletter. We'll be putting the link in the chat box. So in this newsletter, we basically cover all the recent articles and videos, informational videos, opinion articles, and also opportunities and grants in this space. So do check it out for all the latest going-ons in this field. So the registration link is in the chat box. And with this, I would like to thank you all, and I would request our first speaker, Dr. Kalaivani, to start her presentation. So Dr. Kalaivani, so she did her PhD in Dr. MGR Medical University, and she has been working with Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission for more than 11 years, and she is currently the senior scientific officer there. And so I would request Dr. Kalaivani to please give us insights on the on IPC and the drug setting process. So this I'll stop.
Thank you, Dr. Surat, and thanks for this opportunity to the organizers and CPHMS. And I'll be sharing my screen now. So is it visible, my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah. Is it?
Yeah, now it's visible.
Yeah, it is visible, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So today my presentation will be on it is about the IPC and about how IPC develops standards for drugs and pharmaceuticals in India. So this is our building which is located at Ghaziabad, which is Delhi NCR, and it comes under Uttar Pradesh. And like Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, it is an scientific institution, autonomous body established under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India in the year 2009. And with the mandate of publishing Indian Pharmacopoeia at regular time intervals. The Indian Pharmacopoeia is the official book of standards for the drugs which are approved for marketing in the country as per second schedule of Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940. So the Drugs and Cosmetic Act is the regulation which governs the approval process or marketing of drugs and pharmaceuticals in our country. And here in IP, we specify the standards, quality standards for identification, for purity of the drug product, and to assess the potency. IP provides the method and their acceptance criteria to assess identity, purity, and strength of the drug which are imported or manufactured for sale, stocked, and exhibited for sale or distributed in India. So the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission works with the support, works with the three-tier higher bodies, like IPC is governed by general body and then by governing body, and then the governing body and general body are for policy level decisions, and the scientific body is for scientific decisions, to make a decisions on scientific matters, for developing the monographs, for approving the monographs in the Indian Pharmacopoeia, for all these things. And IPC IPC works with IP, like at IPC, the employees works in the two areas, IPC Secretariat and IP Laboratory, which is IPL. It is shown as IPL here. Here, this IPC Secretariat, the activity of IPC Secretariat is developing the monographs for the drugs and pharmaceuticals, which includes biologicals, vaccines, phytopharmaceuticals, blood products, and small molecules also. So, and here the scientist, those who are working in IPC Secretariat, develops the monograph, verifies the monograph in the laboratory, and it is, and then it comes for publication in IP. And those monographs are approved by the scientific body of the commission. And in between scientific body and the IPC's role, we have IPC is having a different expert working groups. For based on the subject, different expert working groups are working for developing this monographs. Yeah, for developing this monographs and all. And in the IP laboratory, the verification of monographs, the methods which will be coming in the monographs are tested and verified at the laboratory or validated as per national and international guidelines at the laboratory. And we used to test the new drug samples also. So this is what basic about the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. And then the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission was established with the mandate of, these are all the 4 important mandates of the commission. And the first mandate is to publish Indian Pharmacopoeia at regular time intervals. And Indian Pharmacopoeia, as I said earlier, it is a book of standards as per Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940. And the to comply with the Indian Pharmacopoeia monographs, or to comply with the standards specified in the Indian Pharmacopoeia, there is a need for reference standards. So to fulfill the intended purpose of standards prescribed in the Indian Pharmacopoeia, IPC also provides reference standards for the for these drugs and pharmaceuticals. And apart from this, these two are with respect to the aspect of quality of drugs. And next comes the IPC plays a key role in promoting rational use of medicines also, with its publication of National Formulary of India. And this is a compilation of the drugs which are there in the National List of Essential Medicines, and which are there in the National Health Programs, and the and many of the generic drugs are compiled here. Brand name is not included in National Formulary of India. And here in the National Formulary of India, monograph is basically on clinical informations. Yeah. Basically on clinical informations like indication, dose, administration, precaution, adverse events, adverse drug reactions, contraindications. Such type of informations are given in the National Formulary of India. And the another important mandate of Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission is Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission acts as a national coordination center for Pharmacovigilance Program of India. So here the Pharmacovigilance Program of India runs in coordination with more than 400 ADR monitoring centers all over the India. And these ADR monitoring centers are like government medical college or private medical colleges. And they used to monitor the adverse drug reactions which are observed in the patients, and those adverse drug reactions are reported to Pharmacovigilance Program of India through its indigenous software, through online, or with the help of WHO software. And the data, adverse drug reaction data, which are collected at Pharmacovigilance Program of India at IPC, are analyzed, and those data, those informations are given to the regulatory authority, National Regulatory Authority, for regulatory decisions, and also submitted to World Health Organization's database. And these are all the 4 mandates of Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. So since today's presentation is on pharmacopoeia and its role, so my presentation will be on pharmacopoeia, how monographs are developed and all these things. So when we talk about pharmacopoeia, what is pharmacopoeia? As per World Health Organization, the pharmacopoeia is a legally binding collection of standard and quality specification for medicines used in the country or in any region. So an Indian Pharmacopoeia, as I already explained, it is a legally recognized book of standards for the drugs which are manufactured or marketed in India, and similar to Indian Indian Pharmacopoeia is for Indian context, and the same Pharmacopoeia we can see in for British Pharmacopoeia, and USP for United States of America, and European Pharmacopoeia for European Union, and they have their own status as per their legislation in their country. And other than these few important pharmacopoeia, there are more than 40 pharmacopoeias all over the world, which can be accessed from the WHO database, World Health Organization database. And here, Indian Pharmacopoeia is a book of standard which is published by Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, and it specifies the standards for quality, particularly identity, purity, and strength of the drugs imported, marketed, manufactured, or marketed for sale in the India. And this book is official in terms of second schedule of Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940. And this is the journey of the slide shows the journey of Indian Pharmacopoeia. Like the journey of Indian Pharmacopoeia starts from 1955 and till 1996 edition. This Indian Pharmacopoeia was published by a committee, Indian Pharmacopoeia Committee, which was constituted at the Ministry of Health, and they used to publish this pharmacopoeia. From the edition, that is 5th edition, IP 2007, IPC started functioning, and IPC started working on it. And the first edition, which was published, the 6th edition was published by Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, which is IP 2010, and then the 7th edition, and the current edition is 8th edition, which is IP 2018. The next edition will be in the year in the current year, IP 2022, which is in process of printing. And like to include any monographs, there are certain inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria for including monographs in Indian Pharmacopoeia. So the inclusion criteria includes drugs which are there in national health programs, drugs listed in national list of essential medicines, and drugs approved by a national regulatory authority, CDSCO, Central Drug Standard Control Organization, fixed dose combinations approved by CDSCO, and any other drugs which are considered important by Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. And there are certain set of exclusion criteria, and that includes, of course, the drug which, when it is banned by the regulatory authority, the monograph is deleted from the IP, and the drugs which are obsolete are deleted, and few drugs which are considered inappropriate. Those drugs are will be deleted from the Indian Pharmacopoeia.
Uday Saxena is a co-founder and chief ideator of Reagene Biosciences. One second, I just mute everyone. Yeah, so he was the mentor in residence and professor of translational research at Dr. Reddy's Institute of Life Science, as well as co-founder of startup biotech companies. He has held several executive and leadership positions at Park Davis, Atherogenics, Dr. Reddy's Labs, and Carius Therapeutics. And he has also previously been in our part of our webinars, and we thank him for being a part of our webinar series again. So, Dr. Uday, if you could share your presentation, or do you want us to share?
Yeah, I was going to request.
I think I'll share.
Shyam.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Surat. Actually, now with the pandemic, this these conferences give me a good opportunity to meet my friends such as Madhu and Brinda and you and Shyam, who otherwise, Dr. Radha, I don't know if she's here or not, but this is the only opportunity. So I'm happy to be here. If we can go to the...
I'm here.
Hi, how are you? I knew you would be there.
Lying down with COVID and watching you.
Oh, okay,
Lying down with COVID
okay.
and watching you.
I hope you get better soon. I don't know if this...
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so if we can go to the first slide. So I have kept the presentation as per the suggestion that Surat gave, about 10 to 15 minutes, and then followed by Q&A. So this is a 100,000 foot view of how you can get a device approved in the US, specifically US FDA. I'm not that well versed about how it works in India, but since I've done devices in the US, I thought I would focus on that. So Sham, if I can have the next slide, please. Yeah, so basically I'm going to walk you through how, first of all, what is a medical device? And then what is the approval process in the US? And I want to connect the dots and also tell you how people are now starting to use alternate to animal models for device approval, because this is an audience I thought that would be interested in that. And finally summarize. So yeah, next slide is fine, Sham. Yeah, so what is a medical device? I mean, there's a picture, as pictures says 1,000 words. So a device as classified by US FDA is anything that can be used in treatment or diagnosis of an individual, of a human. So it can be as simple as a thermometer that you see. Actually, this is a list that I'm sharing with you where the devices are very simple. And you will see there is like a pulse oximeter that we are all very familiar with, insulin pumps, syringes, glucose monitors. So there's a wide variety of devices. Some of them are diagnostic, some of them are instruments, some of them serve to introduce drugs into our delivery system. So it's actually a wide variety, but the methodology or the process used to regulate these and get approval is very similar for all of this, and I'll talk to you. One of the things that's very common, if I can just go back to the last slide, Sham, for one more second, is that you will see all of these devices somehow or the other are in contact with human skin. So when you have something, so a medical device is something that comes in contact with human skin, human body, inside of the human body is medical device. So if somebody takes your saliva and does a test outside using a diagnostic, that is not considered as a medical device. So you don't need to, it's only when the device is either touching or is internal of humans that it's called medical device. These are actually very simple. Sham, the next slide will show us that, yeah, thank you. They can be quite complicated too. The leading medical device currently that's in development is actually wearable medical devices. I don't know how many of you know this, but Apple, Marcel is calling, sorry, yeah, sorry about that. But you will see that there's an Apple Watch, which is rapidly becoming a medical device. It can do ECG and all of that. You also see stents. Stents are what are placed in your body to unclog vessels. You'll also see certain clamps. So these are more complicated and more some things that are placed inside the body also. So devices can be very simple, like I showed in the first slide, or devices can be, a little more complicated. And these are some of the examples of that. Can I go to the next slide, please? So this, I want to show you that the US FDA has, a very strong process to approve drugs. As you all know, and I'm not going to spend too much time, but as you know, you have to do toxicity studies, you have to get permission to get into humans, and then you get an approval, right? That's for the drugs. If you go to the next slide, thank you. The process is actually very similar for devices. You still have to go through your R&D, then you make your submissions to US FDA You await their approval, and only then you launch it. The only big difference is the time and money taken to launch a device is probably 1/10 of what you need to launch a drug. But there is a lot of similarities in the process by the US FDA of how you get things approved. Highly regulated process, but as you will see, one of the beauty of US FDA's regulated processes, they're very time bound and time driven. They'll tell you exactly when you will get what you will get. So that's actually a beautiful system that we have all experienced. Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so just like in the drugs, you have generics, you have novel chemical entities, you have biosimilars, you have biologicals, right? There is a classification system that the US FDA uses and then designs a strategy for you to get its approval. So a novel molecule will have a different set of things that you need to do to get approval versus if you want a generic drug, there's shortcuts to get to it. Similarly, in the device also, the US FDA has actually introduced a classification system. As you will see on this slide, there's a class 1. So a class 1, a good example could be a syringe, right? The syringes have been around for a long time. If you wanted to launch a syringe, it's considered a very low risk thing. And more often than not, if your syringe is very similar, meets the same specs as the one that's already approved, you don't even need to get US FDA approval. So that's considered a low risk. And just to reiterate, low risk or class 1 devices do not need US FDA approval in general. But you have to compare it to what's called a predicate. A predicate is something that an example of a similar device already existing. So you kind of get like a shortcut, just like a generic drug does. Then you move up the risk profile is class 2. This actually will either be, as shown, the examples are shown on the right-hand side. These are actually a little more complicated. These are ones that will actually either stay in the body for a day and might be inside the body or on your body for a day or longer. A syringe is kind of in and out, right? You inject, then you dispose. That's very different than having a clamp or a butterfly that you need to put in to collect blood. So those are higher risk, and therefore they are called class 2. Class 2 has to have an approval process. You cannot launch a product without having your class 2 device. And that class 2 device approval process is called a 510K. You generally don't need too much work there. And as I'll show you, you still have to file an approval process and you get it. So that's a 510K. Class 3 is a little more complicated. These are traditionally things that are placed inside the body. A pacemaker would be a great example of class 3. It's not just going to be staying there for a day or two. It's inside the body and it's going to stay for a very long time. So for this one, you have to get a pre-market approval. That means this is considered very high risk, and you have to do a lot of upfront clinical work. Just like you would, unlike a generic for a new chemical entity drug that you need to get approved, you need to do a lot of, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, right? Similarly, for a class 3 device, the barrier to entry is quite high, and you need to get what's called a pre-market approval. Without explicit approval from the US FDA, you cannot launch a class 3 device. So this is a beautiful way in which the US FDA regulates, how things can enter into a market. This has actually been laid out for quite a long time now. Process has been around for a very long time, and it works really good. Can I go to the next slide, please? Okay, so there are three main ways in which you can get your medical device, right? The first one for class 1 is what's called a general control, where you make the assessment with the US FDA that you don't need a pre-market approval or a 510K, and I'll tell you about those. Essentially, for class 1 devices, like a syringe, it's a go. You can absolutely go ahead and launch it, and you don't even need a written approval from the FDA. The 510K, which is for majority of the class 2 and occasionally for class 1, you have to notify the FDA 90 days prior to introducing the device into the US market. And that allows the US the FDA to look at it and respond to you. But the typical time it takes for approval, and we'll look at that also, is about 90 days. Pretty good. I mean, this is really, really good. The toughest device to get approved is a class 3 device, and I gave you an example of pacemaker, for example. Here you have to allow the FDA a lot more time. They take about 6 months to give you approval, and also the amount of data that you need to submit, both in terms of safety and efficacy, is really on par with a new drug that you need to submit. So it's the toughest road barrier to entry, and this is where you need pre-market approval. So 3 ways to enter the US market. One is general control, a syringe. You really don't need to do anything. You can launch it as long as your syringe is very similar to what's been already out there. 510K is for class 2 devices, and you don't need too much work. This could be something that stays on your arm, for collecting blood or whatever for a few hours or whatever. So these are 510K. This is the second easiest thing. The hardest thing is for things like I said, which is the pacemaker and other things. That takes a pre-market approval. So very clearly, 3 laid out strategies to help companies navigate how to launch a product in the US system. Can I have the next slide? So how about the timelines? I mean, we all know how long it takes to get a new drug approved. There also you have an IND and then an NDA and all that. Here too, very similarly, you have very well laid out timelines. So day 1, when the FDA receives this, and I'm going to get a little closer to be able to read it, by day 7, the FDA sends an acknowledgement letter to you, or the FDA sends a hold letter. So within 1 week, the FDA will make an assessment of, is it ready to go ahead and launch, or do we need more work? If you need more work, a hold letter is sent out. By day 15, the FDA conducts an acceptance review. Here, the reviewers at the FDA will thoroughly review, and then the FDA informs the submitter if the 510K is accepted or not accepted. So within 15 days, you know what the future holds for you. By day 60, and this is more for class 3, the FDA communicates via substantive interaction to inform that the FDA will either proceed with the review or not proceed with it. And by 90, you will generally, for 510K, you will get an approval. And by day 100, you should be able to launch it. The timing is a little more, like I said, for the pre-market approval, the class 3 devices. That number is about 180 days. But again, the clarity in which this is laid out is beautiful, and it works like clock-like. I've gone through the experience. It works like clockwork. So essentially, the idea there is the US FDA is there to help you to launch products, not as a hindrance, but as an oversight and to help you launch a product. That's the whole thinking that the US FDA has. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, this is just, as you can see, the course of 2021. I'm just showing you a snapshot of how many devices. The point I'm trying to make here is the devices can be diagnostics, they can be more complicated, but they all go through the US FDA process and get launched. It's the same set of rules that apply, whether it's a simple catheter or a diagnostic or more complicated things that you need. Like plasmapheresis, one of the things that are shown here is for delipidation. So it all works. The system works beautifully. and it's very easy for a sponsor or a company to know exactly how to go about it. By the way, if you look at the list of devices that are approved per year, it far, far exceeds the number of new drugs. So just goes to show you the complexity of getting a device approved is a whole lot less than trying to get a drug approved. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, I want to introduce, so I talked about sometimes you have to do toxicity, right? Especially if your device is going to be in contact with your skin, then a lot of the toxicity you will need to do is around the skin. Since this is an audience that's very aware of, using alternate to animal models, I thought I'll show you one of the prime devices or technologies that is used to get devices approved. This is called Episkin. Episkin is actually a very nice, technology that is used as a substitute for human skin. It's essentially growing co-culture of skin fibroblasts and skin keratinocytes in transwell filters, and it mimics a lot, as shown on the right-hand side. If you blow it up and look at the histopathology, it mimics a lot. So this is what is used. So for example, if you had something that remains in contact with the skin, right? How do you study its toxicity? One of the simple tests is you take the device, let it sit in a solution and see if something is leaching out from it. And that solution is then planted onto human skin. And the typical tests that are done are for corrosivity or irritation. Those are the skin irritation or corrosivity are the two things that typically have to be done. And if it is found that whatever was leaching actually enters the skin and the systemic system, then you have to do a lot more studies. But this Episkin has turned out to be an excellent replacement tool for human skin that the US FDA now uses all the time. Actually, for cosmetics, as you know, no animal studies can be used, right? All of the cosmetics, that's aside from devices, I'm just saying, all of the cosmetics are approved only on the basis of Episkin. So the impact of alternate to animal technologies is rapidly making its way, at least with the US FDA, and I pretty much believe that Europe will go the same way, and eventually the rest of the world. There have been some projections saying alternate animal use will be cut down by 50–60% by certain dates. So we are well on our way to accomplish some of the missions that Humane Society actually so vigorously and so very well is actually championing here. So can I have the last slide? I think it's the last slide. So yes, please, last slide. Yeah, thank you. I need to read this. So so regulatory tests typically look, as I said, sensitization at the skin. You have to look at genosoc. So it's not that different from a drug, except that a lot of this can be accomplished by using alternate to animal models. But if the leachants or the things that are leaching from your device enter the human system, then you have to do systemic toxicity as well. Otherwise, irritation, sensitization, those are enough. But if there is more of a damage that they perceive, then you have to take it even further. So this is my last slide. The last thing I would like to say is that a lot of more companies now, especially the pandemic, has seen the use of diagnostics, and all of those diagnostics have to actually go through the pathway that I talked about. Typically, a diagnostic would be the rapid antigen test is a great example, right? Everybody is familiar. If we wanted to launch a rapid antigen test today, it would be classified as a class 2 because there's already something out there. We would need to compare, supply some human clinical data, and you'll get. But if it's a brand new test, for example, personally, Reagen is working on a saliva-based test for testing for neutralizing activity, whether to see whether your vaccine has generated any activity or not. That would actually be a pre-market approval because nothing like that exists today. So the burden of proof is a little bigger than that. But long story short, I think the medical device approval system, just like the drug system by the US FDA, very well laid out. You can call them and get a free consultation. Timelines are well known, and the whole pathway, there is no magic, or there is no nothing. Everything is very transparent about how you can get it done. So this is a very brief overview of how medical devices, what are medical devices, how can you approve, what are the different times, what are the timelines. If anybody has any more questions, I'll be happy to help. But since Surat wanted me to stick to 10 to 15 minutes, I thought that's what I will do. So you will see that, my take-home message is of what I just said. So, and I tried to connect the dots to alternate to animal technology as well. So thank you very much for your time. As Surat said, for you to be here Saturday and listen to all this. Thank you. Much appreciate that. So.
Thank you, Dr. Uday, for giving us such a concise review of the process for in US FDA. So we have a few questions, but we'll take them in the end for the interest of time.
Sure.
So I'll call upon Mr. Raj Bhanu. So he's our third and the last speaker for today. He's the Assistant Director, Drugs Control Administration, Andhra Pradesh, and he'll be speaking about the regulatory pathways for drug approvals in India. So Mr. Raj Bhanu, so we'll share the screen from our side.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible, Surat?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Surat and Shyam, for giving me this opportunity. In fact, I'm from a regulatory person from an enforcement department, and this is the first time I'm interacting with AIC or CPHMS. Of course, this because of a little qualification of being a family friend of Dr. Madhu, I believe, but still, yeah, I will try to. First time, since it is first time, as I said, that I was given to believe that it is the audience, the members who will be participating will be students and all, but still some of the researchers will be there. I thought, let me give a brief overview what the regulatory pathway for drug approvals in India. I think you have all heard two eminent speakers, one from IPC, Kalaivani, and of course Dr. Udayji, and who has exhaustive, is a lucid presentation on the device. So let me tell you that both the drug and, let me go the first slide, please. Yeah, so let me have a small introduction in that way. So both the speakers have talked about the drugs as well as the device. So I think now I'll be covering these two things and all, where the India stands and all with respect to the production or otherwise the layout of this one. So can we go for the next slide, please? Yeah. I'd like to see the members appreciate that the kind of pharma industry we have in India and the growth story. You can see that in the last 2 decades, you could see the tremendous growth in that way. And in fact, I am in this department for the past 3 decades, rather. So I'm now a deputy director in drug control administration and have seen this growth actually for myself. I've in fact a witness to all these things, what the pharma industry in India has grown in leaps and bounds. You can see the compound aggregated growth rate for 5 years period. And now at this point in time in 2020, it is around $42 billion. That approximately 3 lakh crores, both of domestic as well as export market. And I think if I could find the figures in the latest in 2021, even in spite of the pandemic and all, the industry exports have not fallen and they have grown. And it is now, I believe it is $49 billion. Let me go to the next slide, please. Yeah, now you can see the clear picture where the India stands, and the India provides the generic medicines to more than 200 countries, including the highly regulated market like US, I think Udayji will agree with me. And it is now poised as the pharmacy of the world, the India. And 8 of the total 20 global generic companies are coming from India only. And we have around 55% of exports to highly regulated markets. The other day I was interacting with US FDA and as well as UK MHRA. And let me tell you, 35% of the generic drugs in that the APIs are coming from India. And 90% of WHO pre-qualified API units are sourced from India only. And the vaccine story, you all know that now we have been supplying vaccines to the world, and 65 to 70% of the WHO vaccine requirements are sourced from this country only. And you can estimate that the number of US FDA approved sites are much more than out of the US. They are 741, and definitely they are much more than what it is there in US. And the number of sites recognized around in UE GMP is 743. These are all the latest figures I have courtesy Pharma Excel. And the number of ANDAs filed, the number of DMS filed, number of dossiers, you can see the figure for yourself, around 4,600 ANDAs, 4,500 DMFs, and 7,000 dossiers. And on the right side, if you could see that, as I said, the number of companies which are they are in the biggest global generic companies from this country. And can you go to the next slide? Yeah, previous slide at least, once again. Yeah, I think if I'm not able to find the last part of the footnote, as I think the global pharma size is around, say around 1,300 billion US dollars, and our Indian share is around 25 billion US dollars. I just want to make a pertinent point here is that a huge opportunity is there for the youngsters, the researchers, and who are putting their ideas and trying their ideas in the incubation centers, like what AIC is doing, and trying to check their ideas, validate their ideas, and try to scale up and try to do all those things. And definitely there is a huge opportunity over here that the kind of market it is there in the globally. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. Now that Udayji has already told about the device part, in how the approval parts in the US and all, though we are at a nascent stage in India, but still we have a very good scope for the device market to grow in India. And as I said, that he has very rightly brought about the examples of the devices and all, and I'll go to the definitions of it anyway. The simple example he tried to tell that even in the pandemic, when we started for the spot test kits and all, they also fall under this one. And if you have that kind of an ideas for the next issues which are coming up, which are hitting the human this one is a disease and all, and what the kind of diagnosis which we want to look at it or at a cellular level, which you are trying, and then you are trying to release it into the market and all these things will squarely fall under the definition of a device. And of course, as I want to tell in the beginning itself, that whatever your idea which you are doing at a cellular level, at a lab level, and then bring it to a consumer level into the market, definitely in the entire supply chain and the entire chain from the development stages and all, they all are highly regulated. And when I'm saying highly regulated, don't just get bogged by that one. And they are all regulated, but and intrinsically are very facilitating by the agencies which are dealing with that. Let me go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So when I said that, when I said a drug, I think definitely in this country, when you talk about the drug, definitely don't go, expand your ideas or definitions to other drugs, which we are fall under different kind of drugs, which we always listen into the media. So this is basically a drug which has defined very specifically under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. Again, don't go by the year, the 1940. It is really, the act is updated. It is current. Every provision is current, and it has been defined, redefined, all those things and all. When you say that in a drug, it is for diagnosis, anything which is for even you are trying to use for diagnosis or a treatment or a mitigation or prevention of a disease or a disorder in a human being or an animal, These are all will fall squarely under the definition of a drug. So whenever when you are naturally will be trying to do something at your level in the research and all, the end in the mind, then if it is really falling under these things and all, definitely it will be attracting the definition of a drug. And once it is attracting a definition of a drug, I think the other part also you can see that if it is for internal or for an external, even if it is substance or a device, then all these things will be falling under the drugs. Of course, in the device case, it should be notified by the central government. And here you can see in this country, more than 600 devices are already notified, right from as small as a tooth clip to a heart stent, and all those things are already notified. And the other products which are diagnostics, I think the COVID self-testing, which I have already talked about, the blood and blood products, biologicals and other things. Surat, can I, I'm not able to see the last part of the slides. Is it, can you help me out on that?
Sham, can you?
Yeah, this is fine. I think if anybody, if all the people can see this kind of a thing, fine.
Yeah, yes, sir. I think, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, then I think, as I said, that the drug has a very comprehensive definition, very comprehensive. It encompasses many aspects which I have already given in the slide. So I think it is for the viewers to go through that. And that's what I said, that when you are thinking about doing something which will ultimately the end is for any of these things and all, naturally it falls under the definition of a drug. So next slide, please. Yeah. So when I say that it falls under the drug, and then there's some laws which are, as I can again say that if whatever you do and then you say that you have done with, no, it's not that. It is not finally done with, and it's not the gospel truth there. It requires the compliance of the provisions which are there under these laws which are there. So kindly have a quick look about these things, the laws which are governing right now in the drugs and pharmaceuticals. I think Kalaivani was talking about the drug standards and all. Yeah, they, as part of their job, they are trying to define a standard for a particular drug, and then with respect to the safety, with respect to the quality of the drug, the purity of the drug, and the impurities which are to be, all those things, all these have been defined, and the monograph which they try to do it. So the standards are already there. So it is a legal requirement. So under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, the rules are there. Again, I said that the medical devices rules 2017 has been brought in after a lot of churning of these things, because we hardly had any devices in our list of drugs before this one, like we have a disposable syringe, needle, and an IV set, that kind of a thing. But now you can see, imagine, I think what Udayji has already shown, I think the list goes on even in this country also. Then we brought in the new drugs and clinical trials 2019, though we were having clinical trials rules and all earlier under drugs and cosmetics rules itself, but a separate rules have been carved out, and they were brought in 2019, very exhaustive document. And and of course the cosmetic rules also were brought in 2020. As Udayji was also telling about the cosmetics, he also touched upon a part of the cosmetic testing part of it. So these are all already there, brought into in these regulatory provisions. So when I say that about a drug, intrinsically a drug also has two intrinsic factors, like quality and then a price. So you bear it in mind when you are finally coming with a product or a device or something and all. Some of these are under price control also, because the government of India, because the major objective of them is accessibility, availability, and as well as affordability. So when having these three A's in their mind, I think the DPCO, I think I don't want to give the history of a DPCO, but as I said, that some of these national, under the drugs under national list of essential medicines, they fall under this price control. And when we are talking about the research and discovery and all those things and all, dear friends, please bear it in mind. There is another things which we fall under this Patents Act, and the IPRs, how you can protect and all. I think probably you are well versed with this one, and those are the things which you have to look into when you are, bear it in mind when you are doing all these things simultaneously. And let me give another caution about that is some of these drugs when you are trying to do, or when you are in your lab level or otherwise, maybe apart from the guidelines which you are following, there are certain products which you will come across, you will stumble upon, is some of the products which are controlled substances under NDPS Act, like ananthranic acid kind of a thing, or acetic anhydride, which is looks like very regular chemical, some sort of a thing, but still it has a very it is a controlled substance under this particular act and its rules. So beware of that, and be caution about that, and you have to comply with the certain provisions of all those things and all other related statutes which also governs the product when it has to be released or when it has to be brought into the market. So let me finish this slide with the sentence saying that all your activities when you are trying to develop from every stage at a cellular level to in the lab to bring it to till your consumer is definitely the regulated one. And just they are not rocket science kind of a things which you cannot understand, and these are only things you have to just on a simultaneously you have to just go through and try to see that you are complying. You have to just check it where you are really complying everything, and all those things are the agencies which are dealing with. Let me go to the next slide. Yeah, as I said that when the regulatory authorities for these things are that since it is a concurrent subject, health is a concurrent subject, the drugs, these are all a concurrent subject, so both the state and the central are involved in a central, since it is a central act, both the central government level at the central CDSCO, Central Drugs Standard Control Organization, I think, and the state governments, all the FDAs, and some states we call Drug Control Administration, in some states it is the foods also. So these are the regulatory authorities which are dealing with this particular regulations. They are enforcing these things. Yeah, please, next slide, please. Yeah, so what is the composition of a Central Drug Standard Control Organization with the permission of the CDSCO, which I acknowledged that. So it's a National Regulatory Authority of India under the aegis of Health and Family Welfare Government of India, as Kalaivani and IPCC. They are also the part of that Government of India Health and Family Welfare. And it's headed by the fountainhead of this one is the Drug Control General of India, is the headquarters at New Delhi. Yeah, please. So can you see this their hierarchy and the kind of offices they have in this country? The headquarters in New Delhi, and they have a zonal office, 6 zonal office, sub-zonal offices, port offices, laboratory. Yeah, and each one of thing what they're trying to deal with. Like in the headquarters, they deal with new drugs, clinical trials, imports, biologicals, medical devices, exports, quality assurance kind of thing, pharmacovigilance, and the legal. And why I have put the PR cell is a red one is that as a researcher or as a person who wants to start with your molecule or any drug candidate or any molecule, naturally you will be finding some difficulties in understanding where to apply your application or petition yourself to further to the next level or whatever it may be. So there is a PR cell in the headquarters of CDSCO. I've given the email ID also, where you can also have an interaction in a world like this, in the virtual. I think the regulatory departments have really evolved over years. I have seen this. I've been in these departments in '93. When initially everyone has to see to each one of us has to see each other across the table. Now there is nothing like that. Now you have to just send it across your query and you will be replied, and you can pose more things and all, they'll be replied. You can have a phone call. All these things are there now. And so is with the zonal offices, which is an extension of the wing of the headquarters and all. So their zonal and sub-zonal offices, they will all take care of this kind of things. They will also will assist you. They will be interacting with you if you need be, and all those things. And as I said, the port offices, import of any particular molecules or a particular excipient or a particular KSMs, key starting materials, if you want to do manufacturing of certain things at a different level when you're trying to. And then comes your testing laboratories. I think one is an IPC and drug testing laboratories, CDTL kind of things. And where what you have done, you have to validate and you have to send it across to IPC kind of things where they will validate and you can get an approval kind of things. The validation protocols, all these things will be done at a laboratory levels. May I have the next slide, please? Yeah, I think although the slides are back and forth talking about the same point, but still, nevertheless, I think just to emphasize that the Induction Cosmetics Act, the rules and all, as I said, that what they govern, as I said, that in DNC rules 1945, they import, manufacture, sales, and the legal provisions. And the new drug clinical trials 2019 is a very exhaustive document. Please go through. I think definitely you will be trying to understand. You will appreciate the kind of inclusions which have been taken, which are on par with any global regulatory departments or regulatory agencies. The investigation of new drugs, and subsequent new drugs, clinical trials, bioequivalences, the ethics committee, and the waivers, where they can give the waiver for any clinical trials. All those things, every bit of it has been dealt with. And though there will be so many forms and things which are there, they are all online kind of things now. I think I'll be in my next slides and a few other slides, I'll be trying to tell that these are all there on the website, and you can run through those easily, and you can apply where you're sitting and seek approvals and happily do your work, and then the approval will be just added to what you have done and to the next level, because all these things have been taken care or rather included to see that we are on par with any global agencies. And because the products which you are trying to do it and put it into the market for human or and veterinary purpose, definitely it has to meet the standards, the global standards, and as well as for your global market. So naturally, these are all thought of. This is a visionary kind of a thing. So these are the things. And medical devices rules 2017. As Udayji has already given some insight about the devices and how US FDA is giving the approvals. I think similar in the fashion of the new drug approvals and all those things, it is also having the same kind of a things like the predicate device, the new device, the QMS system for all these things, for the manufacturing and all those things. These are all the legal provisions which are definitely the best practices by various countries has been taken into this one, taken into consideration and framed. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, I think this one quick slide is about central regulations, what they do. I think the new drug approvals, they look into the new drugs approvals, the medical devices, imports, clinical trial standards, amendments to the acts and rules whenever they are required, and the pharmacovigilance. I think some of the part of the pharmacovigilance has been touched by Kalaivani also. Then the state regulations, what they do is that they are they are approving the manufacturing activities of the drugs which are being the new drugs which are being permitted by the government of India through DCGI, the sale and distribution, monitoring the qualities and all. Of course, if something goes wrong and if something not been complied, and naturally the investigations and then the penal provisions are there, and so the prosecutions will go on. Yeah, next slide, please. Oh, yeah, this is the one, of course, one schematic diagram which you can see the drug research and development process. I think I've given the basic research, non-clinical studies, clinical studies. Though the years are there, the range are there, I think now these have been drastically reduced, the timelines and all, because the research there is because of you have seen this pandemic and all, and there is a lot of other provisions, other guidelines have been introduced into this one to predict the outcomes and get an approval. So I think in the next slides I will try to tell it. So this is I think these are all very very known generic understanding of all these things. The approval and the launch, new drug application, the review process, all these things I have given, post-marketing surveillance and all, the phase 1 and phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials. As you know, that phase 1 is only the confirmatory of the safety, side effects in a small number of healthy volunteers, healthy persons, and then the patient's stage, it will the confirmation. I think these are all very well known issues and all, and I don't want to go deep into these things. I'm just trying to give you an overview where the regulatory aspects are coming into. Yes, Surat, are you?
Yeah. Just in the interest of time.
Yeah, I understand. I'm almost coming here.
Yes.
Next one. Yeah. Again, I just want to give you the definition of a new drug. What is a new drug? And under the Act, it says that anything which has not been used widely, not approved in India earlier, and which also includes anything which is modified, sustained release of any novel drug delivery system. And vaccines are perennially new drugs, recombinant drugs, the monoclonal antibodies, the stem cells, the gene therapeutic products, xenografts, which are used as drugs, new medical devices. So these are all falls under the purview of the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, and for a period of 4 years for the first approval. Next slide, please. The regulatory pathway for the new drugs, I think you can see those diagram and all. The initial drug and discovery and research, the kind of agencies, the kind of departments which are governing. Then at the development and the product registration level, the CDO servo come into the picture, and the manufacturing level, the state comes into the picture. Then the drug promotion, that is the labeling and how it should be used, and all those things that they govern by CDSCO. And the drug pricing, as I said, that NPPA, and the supply chain both by CDSCO and the state. And of course, in a pharmacovigilance, the IPC comes in the picture. So Madam Kalaivani will come into the picture. The next one. The regulatory pathway for new drug, I think this is a very exhaustive schematic diagram, which I have again courtesy CDSCO. The drugs which you have researched on, all those things and all, when you find that it is a promising candidate and all those things, then it is not done with that, and you have to submit for the NECT. If it is a new drug, how it goes, and if it is old drug, where it goes, and if it is phytopharmaceuticals, and if it is a clinical study, no approval by CDSCO for, and only the ethics committee will be in there and have given the entire thing. And where the submission is for any BA/BE study, and if it is for import of a new drug, what are the forms and all there, and if it is for manufacturing a new drug, how it goes on, the pathway which I have given. I think this, anyway, the presentation will be shared to the members. I think you can go through all those things. Don't bog by all those CTs, forms, and all those things and all. Let me tell you that there are subject expert committees. There is a review process. You can as well attend to that, and you can put your point through. And definitely, these all will be discussed at length, and there will be a consultation process will be there. So don't worry about it. Only thing is you have to just fill those forms and give the data which is required by that one. I think based on that, there will be timelines are also there, which I'll be trying to put it to the next slide. So this is drug approval within the 4 years period, which I'm talking about the new drug. There is a symptom application, then there is a review, there is a query, then an evaluation, then again the query if it is answered and everything, and then if it is recommendations, then is a grant, and then the presentation by the applicant will be is in the process. So that's why I said that whenever you have a thing in your hand and you are trying to check with that, you have everything, this process is ready and you can deal with it. The next one. Next one, please. Yeah. So these are the timelines which as much as US FDA has that one, and we are also having these timelines we call SLAs, service level agreement. Sometimes we call service level agreement, because after that it will be an automatic kind of an approval kind of thing. So disposal of a new drug application within 90 days. The provisions for accelerated approval with condition requirement for post-marketing trial. This is a term which has been coined, introduced, or been dealt in the pandemic stages, pandemic situation. Provisions for application by sponsor for expedited review, if it is to be. Then in case of modified or new claims of new drug delivery systems, the non-clinical and clinical data requirement be relaxed, omitted under certain conditions. Permission, rejection, query in 90 working days. So there is a timeline which I'm telling you. It is not that it is like you applied and you forget and they forget. No, there is a review process, and there is an approval process, there is a rejection process, all within the timelines. And in between, as I said, the previous slide which is there, which is a consultation, there is a review, there is a query, and all those things query will be there, and you will be answering all those things. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about, the accelerated approval for serious life-threatening conditions, which we have faced already. Next, please. And unmet, please, the previous one. Yeah, unmet medical needs, no alternatives available for a disease. So taking into account of all these things and severity, rarity, and prevalence, the kind of accelerated approval process is also there. It's not that you have applied and wait for 90 days. No. Then the surrogate endpoints, the predicate, which you can predict the clinical benefit based on that. I think the classical examples of this vaccine, which we have seen, that Covaxin and Covishield kind of things, where we have the predicted clinical benefit has been predicted, and simultaneously it has been manufactured. That's why you can see that the moment the moment the DCGI has announced that they are approving for emergency and restricted use, the next day the vaccine was out. Can you see that? I mean, that can, and the country has witnessed, the world has witnessed. So that kind of a marketing approval has been given in these conditions also. So can I go to the next slide, please? So new provisions of predictability of regulators, pre and post submission meetings are there. The applicant can ask for pre and post submission meeting with payment of fees. So I think payment of fees, I can, without saying, I think in all these forms and all, the payment of fees is already prescribed. So that you have to bear it in mind. The next one, please. The drug approvals beyond 4 years, which are called as old drugs, which are not new drugs, then the grant of licenses for the manufacture of those drugs will be need not be a permission from the centralizing authority, but they can be, you can approach the state Food and Drug Administration or Drug Control Administration, provided you make an application. And the next slide, please. Yeah, you have to provide the data about the stability of the part, the shelf life, and all those things, and all the bioequivalency, all those things, and the safety, the applications of evidence about the stability, safety, and with respect to API and excipients. And the state licensing authorities will be here also. I think you can take a test license, you try your product, you validate both your testing methods as well as your manufacturing methods and all those things, and then finally you can start launching at a scale and then produce for release in the market. Next one. I think I have a beginning in itself. I told you that don't forget to protect your innovation under IPR. Before that, I think the IPR I have given the site and all. I'm not well versed with this part of this thing, but still, if I just have to be in the interest of academic, I just try to include this one. So your patent issues and regulatory approach goes in hand. Please bear it in mind. The next one. I think this is the buzzword. I think the worldwide, and so is it the India also, the ease of doing business. And I think this has been there with every agency. If I'm not wrong, so is the regulatory also. How can you say that regulatory is also ease of doing business? Yes, in regulatory also we have this ease of doing business embedded kind of things, because every state has a policy now. Every state and center has a policy that it has an integral part of becoming an administration, government administration. There is no touch point between the stakeholder and the regulator. Of course, at the inspector level, it will be there, but otherwise, most of the time it will be online, single desk, you call single desk, single window, whatever it may be. So at all the information at the click of a mouse, your compliance burden is reduced by various aspects. There is nothing called a lot of huge documents signed, attested, blah, blah, blah kind of things are not there. I think they're all self-attested kind of things. There are some more things which are reduced in the burden. And now we are moving towards more of a regulatory and in terms of global norms, WHO, US, FDA, and ICH guidelines. And if the timelines, if we are crossed, if the regulatory is not caring enough to give you an approval within the time and all, there are deemed approvals coming into place. These are all in the regulations, let me tell you. It's not that I'm talking in the space. Every regulations has now, which has brought in, are having some deemed approvals. Let me tell you, 2 days back, even there is a draft amendment is coming, and which will come now, even for clinical trials and everything, new drug clinical trials, all those forms are again deemed kind of approvals if you don't process it in time. So there will be pre-approval meetings. There is encouraging innovations. There is facilitator role played by the regulators. There is encouraging for the startups, MSME. There is a PLI schemes. There is a product linked incentive schemes in the pharma and medical device sectors. I think you as an youngsters, the researchers and all, kindly look into all these aspects and all, and try to reap as much as benefit as much as possible. Please, the next one. So these are the important web links which I have tried to give you so that you can reach out to those agencies which I have talked to in wherever it is and all, and definitely those departments will be helping in your activities, in your research activities, to bring your idea or whatever it may be, the product finally into the market. I think with this, I think thank you so much, and my acknowledgements to my drug department, my CDSU, which is our National Regulatory Authority, and the PharmExcel Pharmaceutical Export Promotion Council of India. Thank you so much, Surat and Shyam, for giving me the opportunity and interacting with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Bhanu, for giving us a bird's eye view of the entire process in India, the drug regulatory process. So, we just have time to take a few questions because we've kind of run out of time. So maybe I'll start with few questions which are addressed to Dr. Uday, because he said he has to leave. So Dr. Uday, you're still around, okay? Yeah, so maybe I'll just take the questions addressed to you first. So, so one question which is addressed to you is for Class 2 FDA approval, how many device units are submitted, how to apply from India?
I don't exactly know how many units. That I think if you can go to the US FDA website, you'll be able to find it. Yeah, certainly you can apply from India. What we have done when we apply to US is use a local consulting company that is familiar with how to go about it, rather than do it yourself sitting here, because that's a lot more productive. What you can do, though, you can send an email to US FDA with your query, and they will either respond by email, or if required, they might actually do a face-to-face. I guess right now it's digital. So what I'm saying is go to US FDA for the guidelines on number of units, and try and use a local agent there who can help you. So.
Right. So this another question is rapid antigen testing comes under Class 1, right? So someone is asking.
Yeah, in general, yes. If you're exactly doing the same one, for example, let's take the example of COVID. And if you're measuring spike 1 protein, like, the other tests that are out there, yes, then you have a predicate, and you can just have to compare this with specificity, the performance basically, and it'll be considered a Class 1. But if you're doing something very different, for example, if you're measuring a protein which nobody else has launched a kit on, then actually it may not qualify as Class 1.
Sure. So the next, if anyone has any questions, please type in the chat box. So we'll be reading all the questions from there. So next is a general question. So maybe any of you can answer. So the question is, are regulatory approaches and certification process remain same for veterinary focused medicines as well as that of medicines for human use? So is there a...
No, not at all. Actually, the veterinary is lower hanging fruit. While I have never developed a veterinary product, but I know from a business perspective that it's a very different process. And in general, it means you won't be requested to do as much, an extensive trial and all that. So in general, it's got a lower barrier to entry than humans for obvious reasons. So yeah.
Sure. So there's one question for Dr. Kalaivani. So I think you already answered, but if you want to add any more points to it, please do. So the question is, so the person is asking, I'm wondering on the update of IP on more biological substances, especially on recombinant and biosimilars. So you've written, but if you want to add anything.
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of monographs for recombinant protein therapeutics, even in current edition of IP18, and we have focused on therapeutic monoclonal antibodies and all, with general chapter and specific monographs in the upcoming edition of IP 2022. So, if any stakeholder is having any suggestion of including such type of monograph, they can write to IPC. To IPC's official email ID, lab.ipc@gov.in.
Sure. So I think those are many of the questions, because we're also kind of running out of time. So, also like to add, if any of the panel members want to add any ending comments, Mr. Bhanu, Dr. Uday, or Dr. Kalaivani. So
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to meet Raj as well as Kalaivani, because I didn't know them. Now I have certain contacts that I can use as we go forward with our product launches in India. So very nice meeting both of you. And Surat and Sham, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, ditto from me also, Shyam and Surat. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Madhu Garu, for giving me an opportunity to interact with the team for the first time. Yeah, if the audience and all, which I know know exactly the composition and all, probably our the talk will be a little focused next time if it to be. And I think I just add to the Udayji is that class 1, class 2, and class 3, we have class A, B, C, D, sir, in India for the medical devices. C and D, as you said, that for maybe equated to the class 1 kind of a thing, and B and A will be at a like stunts and other things and all.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys are doing a great job in the last 2-3 years. I really commend on how well the Indian regulatory authorities have really stepped up to the plate. And as you said, the vaccines are a great example of how India cleared the path and got them launched and all that. So kudos to all of the work that both you and Kalaivani ji are doing. So well done.
Yeah, I think we are the global benchmark for the regulatory standards and all. We are at a maturity level more than 2, sir.
No, it's fairly obvious, and enjoyed listening to all the innovations that you're bringing into place. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Kalaivani.
Yeah, same here. Nice meeting Dr. Uday and Mr. Dr. Raja Bhanu. And happy
I'm not a doctorate, ma'am.
Okay,
like my friends over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And happy to connect with you. And yes, of course, like if there is any need for our standard setting process, I think we can connect with you also in future. And and it is a good initiative by CPHMS for maybe for the students to understand the regulatory system and the standard setting process and the things in India. So it is good initiative, and thank you for the opportunity to Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission also. So I congratulate CPHMS like Dr. Brinda, Dr. Mr. Shyam, and Dr. Surat for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kalaivani. Thank you, Dr. Uday. Thank you, Mr. Rajavanu.
I think Dr. Madhu wants to add something.
Yeah. Dr. Madhu, are you there?
Good afternoon, and yeah, it was a nice session. I just wanted to convey my thanks to Bhanu and Uday, of course, Dr. Kalaivani. But more importantly is I think the purpose of our CPHMS is to make people aware of the kind of efforts they are doing, and hopefully we wanted to reach you to how to advance our agenda of bringing all the stakeholders in drug development and persuade them to use more and more in vitro diagnostics. So in vitro methods which are considered to be a valid substitutes for the animal testing. So this is our kind of vision and mission, and also our agenda. I hope we will take your support whenever it is possible. And I thank you again for your time.
Thanks everyone, for coming and joining us, and thank you all the listeners for joining us through all the technical glitches and staying through till the end of the session. So thank you for your patience. So we'll be putting the recorded session of this on our YouTube channel very soon, and we'll be sending the recording to all the registered participants. So I would just like to end with one small note. So from CPHMS, we are now building an interactive database of all the researchers in India who are working on these microphysiological systems or even computational models in India. So we are trying to build a database, an open access database where everyone can visualize who else is working on these methodologies, along with what is the infrastructure and skills which are there. So to So to do this, we are kind of collecting the information using using a Google form. So we'll be putting the Google form in the chat box. So I would request anyone who is basically, we are looking for researchers, postdocs, and independent researchers who are working on various technologies in India. So I would request if anyone is among our audience is postdoc or an independent researcher or an industry personnel who is working on any of these technologies, please spare a few minutes of your time to kind of fill out this Google form. It's not very elaborate. It'll just take 2 or 3 minutes of your time. And this kind of database will help us to identify where the challenges are and where does the public and private funding can be focused on specific gap areas in India. So so I'll just be posting the thing in our chat box. So please, sorry, I just stopped sharing. Yeah.
Thank you, Surat. Can we leave?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, so I've just posted the thing on the chat box. So yeah, so please, if anyone is an independent researcher, please take out the few minutes of your time. So with that, I'll Sham just want to.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and hope to see you all at the upcoming events of the center. Thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you.